Welcome, welcome,
Okay.
folks. Thanks for being here. This is Unpacking New York City's discretionary funding process with CMW strategies and the Roundtable. We're super excited to host this workshop for our Roundtable membership community this morning. My name is Kinsey Keck. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with brown hair. It's pulled back in a clip today, and I'm wearing some large, round, wire-framed glasses that are kind of purple and a cozy sweater that is white with black horizontal stripes. That is button up. And I am in front of a blurred background. And I'm also the programs director here at the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. For those who don't know, which I feel like you all do, the Roundtable is a grassroots service organization that works to improve and advance the state of arts education. We do that in many ways: professional development workshops, advocacy, sharing online resources, and platforms to connect the arts ed field. Although we're currently meeting today online via Zoom, the Roundtable would like to acknowledge that we do work and live on unceded lands. Manhattan, or the place that is widely known as New York City, exists on the contemporary and ancestral homelands of the Canarsie, Lenape, Munsee, and Wappinger people. These sovereign nations and communities are still thriving here, and we continue to occupy their lands. So we would like to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black and immigrant communities which have helped build the city we know and love today. As we recognize that all of our pasts, presents, and futures are intertwined, just going to drop in the chat to uplift a handful of contemporary Indigenous arts organizations that we can all support and learn from. So if you haven't before, save these links, check out these organizations. I invite you also to share any links or highlight and uplift organizations that you would like to share with folks on the call today in the chat. We do encourage you to, in addition to learning more about these organizations, support them with donations if possible. Thanks, Al. Okay, some Zoom reminders. If you're having trouble with Zoom, I'm here to help. Please send me a private message. You can also message Kim Olson. Please do keep your mic setting on mute unless you're the person speaking. We encourage you to use the chat to connect with other folks on the call. You can also introduce yourselves there now, say who you are, where you're calling in from. We will also collect questions from the chat for a Q&A at the end of the call. This call does include automated captioning via Zoom. You can find turn captions on via your toolbar. If you select the More button, Captions, and Show Captions, they should start populating for you. And this session is being recorded. It will be made available to registrants within the next week once we're able to get it edited and uploaded. So look for that as well. I think those are reminders done. So just a little bit about CMW strategies as part of the roundtables. It starts with the arts advocacy campaign. We have engaged with CMW strategies as our lobbyist or government relations firm for going on, I think, 5 years now. And they have been an integral thought partner and advisor, helping the Roundtable navigate city and state government and think strategically on how we activate our broader coalition to have our voices heard on the impact and importance of funding arts education. And work with them has done things like help us to establish the Support for Arts Instruction Initiative, a city council initiative, and to build a base of support for arts education with government champions. So we are so grateful for this continued partnership. And that leads me to tossing the mic over to Regina Pareto-Ryan from CMW. Thanks for being here, Regina.
No, thanks for having me. We always love to work with the roundtable. Hi, everybody. Glad to be back. I'm joined here today by my colleague Evelyn Pope, and we're glad to be here again. I think this is our third time doing a presentation like this for roundtable members and friends, and we are really interested in supporting the arts community and helping you connect with your local legislators and securing additional dollars to support the great work you do across the city. So let's jump right in. CMW has been the Government Relations Council for the Roundtable for several years now. We are just so you know a little bit about us, we are a 4-decade government relations city firm. We're a top 10 city lobbying firm and a top 20 state firm. We have a very robust group of nonprofit clients, many of whom are in the arts and cultural sector. So we're both experts on the city's budget process as well as on the arts and culture funding and policy at the city and state level. So Roundtable is really a central part of our work in that sector. They play a really important role in supporting arts education and guiding decision makers on what city funded arts and arts education initiatives should look like across the spectrum. So, besides me working closely on this project is Michael Wollos, who's the founder and managing partner of the firm, and Evelyn Pope. Evie, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll switch the page.
Hi, nice to see you all. My name is Evelyn. I'm a director here at CMW. I work primarily with our nonprofit clients and support community engagement for kind of a whole wide variety of clients. I support with throughout the entire kind of budget process, which we're really here to talk about today. But I've also included kind of our contact information. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to the roundtable to connect us, or you can reach out to us directly as well.
Okay. So in this presentation, we want to sort of ground the conversation in the now of city government, and give you an overview of how to do advocacy for your organization at the city level, with some nuts and bolts steps to advance your requests. Tried to change it up a little bit from last year. So that we're not here doing the same presentation time and time again, but we welcome your comments and questions. It would be interesting to us to know who has never received council discretionary support before, and if you have any particular questions about discretionary dollars. If you're a complete newbie and have never done this before, when we'll leave time for Q&A, but as Evie said, we are totally open for questions, comments, and assistance after this presentation. So our advocacy for clients and sort of engaging with government is reshaping itself this year as we have entered a new political term. I'm sure you all know we have a new mayor, Mayor Mamdani, and he is in the process of really shifting the focus of city government, setting new priorities for city government and building his team, from the highest, mayor's office to city commissioners. We're waiting for his decision on who will be the cultural affairs commissioner, but he has to date announced the new chancellor for schools, and he's created a new deputy mayor position, the deputy mayor for economic justice, which indicates, I think, really the magnitude of shift that he's trying to bring to city government. We see the viewpoint looking from the perspective of the person in city government. We hear a lot about workers rather than hearing about businesses or economic development. We'll take that and consider that and figure out how to move that into the arts space. We want to make sure the mayor is introduced to the issues that are important to artists, arts organization, arts educators, teachers, schools, art students, everyone connected, and help him understand how it aligns with his agenda and is important to people across the city. On the other side of City Hall, there's also a brand new city council. The city council just started its new term. They've elected Julie Menon speaker. She's a more midline Democrat than the mayor is. She's filled out her leadership team and identified 11 members to be her core advisors. The council has also established 40 committees, where they'll hear legislation and make decisions on budget. Among those 51 members elected this year, 9 are brand new members. And for those of you been engaged in this work before, you know there's a budget negotiating team as well at the city council. This is an internal team. It's not a publicly elected group, but the speaker selects council members to serve on her budget negotiating team, and that's where most of the key decisions about from the council side about the city's budget get made. We have reference sheets for you that we'll share that will show you all of the council committees and the membership, and another sheet will show you all of the council members and where they're from and what their committees are. Next slide. So just to again talk a little bit about what we do with the roundtable, and I think a lot of this might be of interest to you, and is actually work that will support the whole community of arts education organizations. But for the roundtable, we look to support and advance budget and legislative proposals that support arts education. We're generally introducing the roundtable and engaging to promote the mission of the roundtable and uplifting the work that they do in professional development and supporting workers and the research they do in guiding schools to implement strong arts education programs, you know, the whole universe of the work that they do. Part of that is making sure decision makers and legislators understand the impact of both the roundtable and their programs, and generally the impact and importance of arts education. And we build connections. Like today is a great example of that, like building community, supporting community, and by building communities, supporting connections, demonstrating the impact of work, and showing the strength of all of our initiatives, we look to identify and secure champions for the roundtable's mission and requests. A champion to us is a council member who stands up and says, arts education is so important. I'm not going to, you know, this is going to be a priority for me. I want to make sure it's available, you know, universally in public schools. And I want to make sure artists can continue to thrive and live in New York City and support kids' education. Okay, next slide. Okay, so a little bit about how do you go about advancing, putting together a funding request and advocating for your request. How do you get that money, right? Just to get us started, I'm thinking there are 3 basic steps. It's identifying yourself, who you are. It's joining, connecting, and demonstrating your community. And then it's the work of advocacy. So a little bit more on each of those. Before you, or part of your budget request to the city council or to, you know, the Department of Education or the Department of Cultural Affairs or whatever government body you're looking for, is take a scan of who you are and make sure you are presenting all of you. Everyone who you talk to, you should be able to provide materials that explain what's your reason for being, what is the mission of your organization, you know, what's your theory of intervention, what are all your programs. Don't assume that folks know who you are when you walk in the door. Don't assume that they're going to, you know, understand the whole of you by submitting that council application online. You want to make sure that when you walk in the door, there's like that headline about you, like, you know, I see like Sundog Theater on my screen. My screen only, so I can only see a few people, but like Sundog, what do you want, you know, Councilmember Hanks to think when she sees you walk in the door or when she sees your logo? You know, there's the essence of you and then there's the whole of you. So spend time in identifying what your organization is, what your reason for being is, and what your programs are. And then part of that is understanding and presenting what your needs are. What's the number you're looking for? What is your budget request? And how that ties into who you are. A key part of these budget requests and advocacy and the work you do is your community. And think really broadly about your community. It's all the people and places you touch. and ground yourself in all of those neighborhoods and communities and people that you're with and make that known to the council members or the DCLA or whoever it is that you're asking for support from. And this is everything. It's both your clients or your visitors or your students. It's your staff. It's your board members. It's your zip code. It's your neighborhood. It's who all those people look like and where they come from. You know, if you're immigrant serving or you're elderly serving or your children serving or you know, um, you're speaking English and Spanish, or you know, all of the things that define your community, you want to be able to share. And then the other thing is community is also partnership and collaboration. And I think, you know, based on my experience and what I see out there is organizations that can demonstrate partnerships, support from community members, and really like connections do well. I think you do better in your work and you also do better in your advocacy and your requests when you can demonstrate that you're part of a team, that you're part of the fabric of life in New York City. And just remember that it's something you should, you know, do this scan every once in a while so you're not missing anybody. And, you know, the players at the city council have changed. So your community scan is going to help them identify what's their connection to you as well. And that's always nice to be able to identify whether it's a personal connection, like a constituency connection, a community connection, whatever shape it takes. It's really helpful to advancing requests and building support for your asks when you make it easy for decision makers to understand who you work with, who you're connected to, and where their connections might be. Okay. And then the third piece is advocacy. And this is work that you do all year long to promote yourself. You know, you've got your materials, you know how to introduce yourself and explain about who you are and show your connections, and then you go through the process of promoting, marketing, engaging. Um, you all have work that happens in a place, so you want to make sure you invite people where it's appropriate to invite them. Um, Council members are, you know, they all have a constituent services arm. Constituent services is important to every single office, and they are open and welcome invitations. You might not get them. It might take you 3 years to get them to show up, but they've all got an inbox that's reviewed. And that like having that strong community promote you as well is part of that advocacy work. Keep keep active on social media, newsletters. If you have events or announcements, it could be a recital, it could be a gallery show, it could be a school event, it could be a research study, it could be an evaluation, it could be a newspaper article from some other city that's about you. Share that information in whatever ways you can. Um, uh, Members and their staff are very active and looking at social media, so it's worth putting a little bit of muscle behind that effort. I know that's like a lot of work and staff time, but um, once you know stand up those kind of social media campaigns, it's a good way to connect with council members. Um, and some of the other kind of tools that we've seen work effectively are like these one-click advocacy tools or letters of support and testimonials from your community members. You know, if you're in a classroom and you've got students who are old enough to compose an email, that's great. Maybe you share images of their work. Maybe their parents will write an email. Whatever way you can think of to tap into the folks that you're working with and have them help advance your requests can be really, really helpful. And all of that all across the year helps to sort of support these connections with council members. All right, let's go to the next slide. Evelyn, you want to take these next couple ones talking about the council connections and the actually digging in there?
Yeah. So, as Regina's mentioned, some of the folks that you'll look to engage are those kind of individual council members that may represent your site. And within those council offices, there's a couple of different staff that are pretty key. That includes the council members, chief of staff, the budget director, if they have one, and then those constituent services liaisons who might be able to uplift events or just connect kind of greater with community if you're also kind of looking to host an event or promote any kind of anything that's happening with your organization. So that's kind of at the individual council member level. And then in terms of council leadership, the speaker, newly elected speaker, Julie Menon, is definitely key for advancing citywide and speaker initiative requests. Any way to activate the speaker's office or connect with the speaker's office is really important in kind of getting into the council priorities for the year. And then other members to kind of get in front of are the council's leadership team. We'll share this full list, but it includes council member Sean Abreu, who's the new majority leader, Deputy Speaker Natasha Williams from Queens, who's also the Cultural Affairs Committee Chair, Councilmember Linda Lee, who's the Finance Committee Chair. So a lot of these folks are also going to be on the council's budget negotiating team, who negotiate all of the different council priorities for the year related to the city budget. And we're still waiting on kind of that full list of BNT, but those are other kind of folks to look to engage. And then in terms of committees, some of the key committees for roundtable members include obviously cultural affairs. So that's Chair Natasha Williams. Education, the new committee chair is Eric Dinowitz. Children and Youth remains with Althea Stevens in the Bronx. And Finance, as I mentioned, is chaired by Linda Lee from Queens. And then on the other side of things, not kind of elected, are the committee staff and the finance division staff. It's really important to kind of become a known entity with the council, and that can be through testimony or also filling out your reporting and making sure that the finance division is aware of the work that you're doing. You'll also likely, if you do receive a citywide initiative or speakers initiative award, or are looking to apply for one, you'll meet with the finance division and make sure that the analysts that are focused on education or cultural affairs are aware of your work. So now kind of turning to the actual kind of applications and what that looks like. We thought it would be helpful to kind of walk through what the work ahead looks like, and offer some advice as to kind of what the different pots of funding are. So the applications have opened. They opened in early January, and they're due on February 18th. We'll be sharing a key dates resource that includes those kind of due dates as well as a timeline with some of the information that can help kind of guide your advocacy over the next few months. So some of the things that we recommend that you all prepare kind of throughout the end of January, throughout February, and the next few months include letters of request. This is just kind of a brief summary of what you're looking for, an overview of your organization, and any way that you can kind of describe your impact. Also, those letters of support that Regina mentioned from principals or other community members that are familiar with your work. We also recommend that you request meetings with your council member and their budget director, so you can kind of further explain the work that you do in the district and what you're looking to do with the funding that you're requesting. In addition to the letters of request, we often recommend the organizations prepare one-pager. This is kind of more visual. You can include photos, statistics, testimonials, anything that can really capture your programs and impact best for the council member. Oftentimes the budget directors will collect stacks of one-pagers from organizations and then present those to the council members when they're kind of sharing recaps of meetings. So it's always helpful to have something that will really kind of clearly show what you're asking for, a contact for your organization, and kind of your impact. And then in those budget meetings, sometimes it's helpful to have presentations. This can be kind of your one pager in just a slide format. Just these budget directors have many meetings, and it's always helpful to have something that's a little bit different. And so you don't always just have to kind of be on Zoom together. You can have something to show, and maybe a video of a performance or a video from students, anything that can really show your work. We also recommend that organizations offer preliminary budget hearing testimony. Those hearings will begin in February and go through March. And it really depends on kind of where your work falls. Some of you may have work that falls into different committees other than the ones that we mentioned. So just keep an eye out for those committee hearings and when they are calendared, and kind of figure out which are best to testify in front of. And then in kind of February and April and March, we recommend, if you have kind of a citywide initiative request, to directly appeal to the committee chairs, council leadership, and the speaker. And then really key to all of it is to complete the discretionary funding application. It's really the only kind of top priority thing that is required. And then individual council member offices will have supplemental applications, and we'll share that document that lists all those supplemental applications. And those are often meeting request forms as well. So it just helps the offices kind of organize and figure out how to schedule meetings with the appropriate folks.
Evie, I'll just add a note here on the application. I think it's important for everyone to keep in mind that the official discretionary funding application is essential. You cannot get funding without an application, but the application is important for determining your eligibility for funding, and for transmitting requests to council members. So when you go into your application and you check off the types of funding you're applying for, there's no limit to what you can check off, but know that that checkbox where you select CASA, you select Sue CASA, you select cultural immigrant, you select, maybe an initiative or speakers funding. The application is used to generate a list of applicants and categories of funding they're applying for, and send that to council members. So council members will know you've applied for CASA because they'll have a list that's sent to them centrally that indicates CASA. It doesn't mean that they're going to open up your application and look at it. You should assume that nobody is reading the narrative that you include in your application. So that's why it's really important to ask for funding through like an email letter sent to every council member that you're asking for. I'm just going to say CASA. You're asking for CASA from, with your one pager attached. Their staff should be looking through applications, and many of them will review the applications, but they might not read that application until they've gotten that prompt from your letter and your one pager in the meeting. So don't assume it's looked at. Assume that all that hard work you put into the application narratives is information that's good, but you got to cut and paste it and share it in other ways, which Evelyn's outlined here. Okay. I guess I'll take this one, Ev. And this is like this checkbox, right? The discretionary funding. The council has the power to adopt the budget, and what they do when they adopt the budget is they take the mayor's executive budget and they adopt that executive budget with changes. And one of the changes that they are empowered to make is to add money to the budget. And now those dollars are discretionary dollars. The council has established these categories of discretionary dollars, and each category has rules around it. The local funding essentially is money that's divided up among the 51 council members, and the local council member has the discretion to select providers in each category. The youth category and the aging category are by charter required to serve youth and seniors and to go through Department of Youth and Department of Aging. Some of you may get funded in those categories. The borough pot, the anti-poverty pot, and the community safety and victim services pots of local funding are all just local funding with another name. There's no statutory rules around what that money can be used for. And it's really your application is for local, and the member kind of decides which pot they'll park you in if they decide to fund you on the local list. Speaker funding, similarly, is just money added to the budget, which isn't categorical. It's not limited to any type of program or purpose. It's not limited to any type of organization. I should say all of the money is limited to nonprofits, but it's not programmatic. And the decision making around speaker funding is there's money that the speaker allocates at her discretion. The speaker will allocate funding based on requests from her members. So having a champion council member who's going to ask the speaker to fund you on the speaker list is one way to get money. And the speaker also typically will divide up portions of that speaker pot across the borough delegation and borough caucuses, and will take recommendations from those groups on how to allocate funding. And then there are citywide initiatives, and there's two categories of citywide initiatives. There's all of the citywide initiatives, which are programmatic and meant to serve geographic areas beyond the bounds of any single council district. And then there are those that are member designated. So these are initiatives like the CASA, Cultural Immigrant and Digital Inclusion, that have programmatic purposes. They are limited to organizations and programs that fit within those limitations. But the choice of organizations and the distribution of funding is decided by the individual council members. So there's 51 doors to knock on there for those member designated initiatives, just like local. And so in a local member's office, a local council member's office, they've got very significant pots of money available to them to designate. And so they'll look at the whole of it. They'll look at their local allocation, they'll look at their member designated initiatives, and then they'll have a list of organizations they want to fund, and then they'll do a matching. So your application can be broad. If you're applying for CASA, you should also apply for local, always. If you're applying for cultural immigrant, you should also apply for local. Any one of these member designated initiatives should also be matched by a local request, because members look at it that way.
I'll
Okay.
also just add quickly for CASA that we hear from a lot of members, they really defer to their school leadership as well, if they will decide to continue with CASAs at a school or shift things around. So this is where it's really important to secure letters of support from principals to help kind of indicate that there's interest from the school in having a CASA program there, and that the council members really partner with the schools in that way for particularly CASA. So Regina, I'll turn back to you to talk about new initiatives.
Okay. Before this presentation, we got a question about how do you go about applying for initiative, and what are the rules around there. So I'm going to try to answer two questions. One is, how do you create a new initiative? How do you make a request for an initiative that doesn't exist? And how do you, as an organization, apply for funding through an initiative where you've never gotten funding before? The first thing to know is that you can apply for anything. There's no limitations on what you can ask for. And there is a box on the application on the list of citywide initiatives that's called New Initiative. So if you want to fund, if you want funding for a program that you don't see has a place on that list or Schedule C, you can absolutely click New Initiative. Um, and you can also select. It's sort of when you do the application and you want to suggest to council members places where they can fund your work. And if you're looking for a funding level that's head and shoulders above the level that you'll get through a CASA or through local, the citywide initiative or speakers list is the place to look. So there's no limitation on what you can check, but you do want to make an application that's reasonable. So reviewing Schedule C and the existing initiatives and the purpose of funds that's listed there is a good first step for you to see if there's anything that you could reasonably say matches the programs that you offer and that you want funding for. But the way the council will create a new initiative, there's many ways they might do it. There's no rule on how to create a new initiative. Um, Typically, it's initiatives will fund things that are fund providers and services. And sometimes the money will go to a nonprofit, sometimes it will go to a city agency that are programmatic, that are focused on a particular issue area or service area. They may be designed to address a very specific community need or serve a particular population. I think the a good example is the immigration services initiatives following the change in federal policy and enforcement or approach to immigration last year. The council recognized that the immigrant community across New York City required a lot more support from city partners, and the council created a host of new initiatives to support immigrants living in New York City. So we see new initiatives that were stood up when the council was able to identify a particular need to serve a particular group, and then they internally decided how to categorize those pots of money, how much money they had to put towards it, and then they worked through identifying organizations um, to get funded in those. Um, we'll see across the initiative list that initiatives are multi-borough. As I think I said before, initiatives typically do not fund work that takes place in just one council district. You'll often hear, oh, it's a citywide initiative, and that means at least 3 boroughs. That's the general rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be 3 boroughs. Sometimes we see initiatives that fund organizations that are in 2 boroughs or aren't necessarily so geographically tied. And they usually have multiple providers funded. So for an existing initiative that has multiple providers, it's serving a particular population, you can advocate on your behalf to be included in an initiative. And that's going to take, that takes a special kind of work to get a council member to agree that there's more need, that their initiative should be expanded, that there's organizations that are not on the list that should be. And that's a whole advocacy campaign, but beyond your initiative. I mean, I'm sorry, beyond your application that can take place throughout the budget season. Um, and the decision to add a group to an initiative can be made by the speaker, of course, and her BNT, but also the committee chairs have a lot of sway on the initiatives in their portfolios, as do council staff. The council staff are often in a position to first highlight an issue and help council members set their agendas and then offer solutions. So initiatives are often offered as answers to policy questions and policy agendas that council members present. You know, like a council member last council, there was an issue with immigration and serving the immigrant community in New York City. And what were the answers? They looked at legislative solutions, they looked at administrative solutions, and they looked at funding solutions. And what we saw as an outcome is a lot of new initiatives created. The prompts for a new initiative is often from an advocate or a provider. So what does that prompt look like? It looks like these conversations. It looks like advocacy around a policy agenda. It looks like your one pager calling for funding for a new initiative. And it looks like the meetings and testimony and rallies and letter writing that we see. It's the initiatives, creating a new initiative is a bigger lift than getting local funding. But at the start of a term with a new speaker and new committee chairs, I would say there's often a little bit more opportunity to create new things and kind of reset the agendas and priorities of council members, which you can see on the outcomes of the budget at the end of the year. So I'll stop there on that one. Oh, and this is I think we shared this last year as well, a good outline of the budget cycle. Obviously, the applications open now. This is a busy time for preparing for your ask, getting yourself organized and creating all of your materials. As those applications are created and submitted, the citywide budget schedule opens. This year, we're going to see the mayor's budget, first budget on February 1st. That's his first big policy agenda. This is where we'll see some of his priorities come to life. And the council will start thinking about what's its position on the budget and the proposals from the mayor. As you complete your applications and schedule your meetings, we'll move into March when there's council hearings on the preliminary budget and the council releases its priority list, which is the budget response. It's due on April 1st. That's where we see the citywide, the big picture priorities established by the council in the budget. And then then we take a little bit of a breather. And then move into the executive budget where that's the mayor's final budget proposal for the coming year. The council again does the hearings. There's lots of opportunity to do advocacy. You'll see a lot of folks on the city hall steps or hosting breakfasts or doing meetings and testifying at executive budget hearings. And then the final month is really a behind closed doors month of negotiations, more intense advocacy and lobbying for budget outcomes. And we see those decisions, the final decisions for your local awards and your initiative awards and any kind of big picture stuff announced in the final adopted budget, which has to get passed by June 30th. And then you don't really shut down, but you get a little slower. You look for what happened in the budget in the summer to see if there's any opportunities that remain and move towards the contracting process and continued, sort of engagement for the rest of the year. And then we'll be back here next January and do this all again. I think this is our last slide, right, Evelyn? Oh,
Just one more.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I just included some helpful links here. One is just to find your council member. You can kind of search by address of your programs. We also added the discretionary council email address. This is for any kind of particular questions about the application. It connects you directly to the discretionary unit at the City Council Finance Division. So any questions on application or eligibility or previous awards that you might have questions about, you can reach out to that email. We've also added the discretionary funding policies and procedures for FY27. Always helpful to review those if there's been any changes or any questions on eligibility or applications. Then there's the link just to the general application, as well as the database to search the awards from previous years, and a link to the Council's FY 2026 budget tab. This includes Schedule C, which outlines all of the different citywide initiatives and local funding. So you can kind of take a look at that to see what maybe your council members have funded in previous years, and then also take a look at kind of what those citywide initiatives look like. And then as a follow-up to this presentation, we'll also share our key dates document, as I mentioned, that outlines the supplemental forms. And then one thing that I did not add on here are those reference materials that Regina mentioned with the committee chairs and the speakers leadership team. We'll be sharing those as well. But I think now we can turn it over. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer anything. I think we have around 12 minutes left.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much for that very thorough presentation. One question that has come in a couple times, it was answered in the chat, but I just want to reiterate again. Also, as Evie just shared, I will be sending a follow-up email to you all that will have the slides, all of those resources that Evie shared as well, and the key dates document. So look for that. It'll take us a moment we'll also share a link to this recording. It'll take us a moment to quickly edit and upload this. So you should hear from me next week with all of these things. Okay. All right. I see we have some questions in the chat.
So I just read through Riam. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so the application's due February 8th. Good idea to get it done a little bit early for sure. Aim to submit as soon as you're able to submit that. Each council member will have its own kind of practice and rules about who they meet with. They don't all do budget meetings. Some of them will only do meet with new groups. Some of them have like scheduling, what do you call it? The Calendly links that they'll post. Many of them want to see that you've applied before you'll meet, but others will meet before. So there's no rule. Evelyn's going to share that key dates document. That can be your initial guide to what you need to do there. And we do update that as we learn more information from members' offices. It's probably a little slower this year since it's a new council and there's some new members, but we update that probably weekly at some point. And then in terms of how do you frame your request for CASA? I think, I generally the application's pretty clunky and it's a lot of work. You might find that you do more than one application. That's the narrative portion. You might do a CASA application, and then you might do a citywide application. There's no limit to the number that you can submit. For your CASA on that application, I think you can do a general description of the program you offer to schools. And it doesn't hurt to include the list of schools that you want to be in if you know for sure which schools those are in your narrative. You don't have to do that. You have to, when you talk to the council member, make sure they know that you're applying for CASA and what your school connections are. And as Evelyn said, if you want to be a CASA provider in a public school, really important to get the school to ask as well. Like have the principal or the art teacher, whoever your contact is, also reach out to the council member's office and say, we want Arts Connection in our school as our CASA provider this year. And for us, I think you can do one CASA application. I don't think you don't
Per
have
district?
right. You don't have to do CASA for PS1 and CASA for PS2. You can do the one application with both schools on it.
Okay, that's great to know because we have been doing historically one CASA application per school, not per district.
So you file a city council discretionary application for every single school.
Yes.
You have to file CASA, click the name of every council member where you want to have a CASA. So every council member will get a spreadsheet that says all of these organizations applied for CASA in my district. And then you want to make sure they know which schools you're going to be in. And you can list in your single CASA application in that narrative, you can list the names of all the schools where you have programs.
Great. That will save me a lot of time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then I'll just add also in terms of the application deadline, I would definitely try to get it in before the 18th, just in case there's any issues with the website or anything like that, at least like a day or so before.
Yeah. Okay. Chris asked about how do you decide on your champion? Your champion is like your local member, someone who knows you and likes you, who okay, you got to look at who has a little bit of juice at the city council. Look at the list we send you. Who's on the leadership team? Who's a committee chair? Um, who's in good favor? Those are good champions. But you have to ask, like let's say you're in Councilmember Dinowitz's district, he's the education chair, you've got programming there, you have a meeting with him and say, listen, Councilmember Dinowitz, I really want to we could really use some support on the citywide level for our programs. Will you be my champion? Like, yeah, ask them, and ask them who else you should ask. Like they all talk to each other. So I think the best way is just to be straightforward and they get how hard it is to figure this stuff out. Um, yeah, so look where you're hitting. Look where like that's the community scan. Like who do you work with? Where are you working? And then try to line that up with council members who are interested in those places and those people. And then ask them to be your champion. And then to Louise, you've got the narrative about, okay, CASA versus you sometimes have to do more than one application. So it might work out that you do one CASA application and then you do a different application for a different initiative. So you can click when let's say you're doing a, citywide initiative support, whatever you're doing. Did you tell me what you're doing? But so you're doing a citywide initiative to work with foster children in arts in their whatever. And that narrative is different. You want to present that narrative and you can click all the council members too. So it gets sent to them. I mean, it'll be on the citywide list. Clicking a council member's name will flag the application for them.
And so just to be crystal clear, so I'm literally submitting like maybe 3 of these online applications. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I didn't know you could do that. Thank you.
Do as many as you want. And projects you can only get funding for work that takes place between July 1, 2026 and June 30th, 2027. Must be one in that fiscal year. Are there other questions? I saw a hand raised somewhere. Janny?
Yeah, that's me. Hi. So I have a question. I think we are submitting too many applications. I think we have like 6 or 7 because they're so different, the narratives in between each other. And also the way that the application is done, you have to say what agency do you want to contract with. And so, some of the agencies can contract with some of the initiatives. So it's kind of confusing in that way. Do you recommend having a specific amount of applications or, does 6, because they're so different, does 6 make sense? Like, how do you navigate that?
So there are many organizations that get funding from a lot of different initiatives. Usually that's big, giant ones. Cultural programs, arts organizations, there's a smaller universe of initiatives that you fit into because the council puts a lot of money into CASA, like that eats up a lot of the cultural money, and the council puts a lot of money into DCLA's budget. So you got to think like big picture, the council saying, how do we fund arts, right? We're going to put this giant chunk of money in DCLA's budget, and that's part of that's on their list, right? So that takes away from money they might otherwise put on the discretionary list. So in my estimation, the opportunities for discretionary funding for arts organization are a little bit constrained. And sometimes if you see that you're doing programs that fit into many categories, your challenge is probably to find a supporter who can help you figure out where to put you. It's the challenge is getting somebody who wants to support your work. Because a council member is not restricted to funding you according to your application. They don't have to look, they can fund you without ever looking at your application. Right? And we've
Which I
seen
think
this.
what happened. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
we selected SBS as the contracting agency, and they still funded us through the CLA. So
Use
it
also use the discretionary at council.nyc, the question. Send your questions there. Like on technical questions, don't be shy about asking them for questions. If you have a CDF grant, they're going to fund you at DCLA. And if they fund you, let's say you got a new initiative funding and it went through the Department of Social Services. Might happen, or Department of Health, right? And you're an arts organization and you got that funding in the budget. You can call them and say, I'm a cultural organization. Can you move it to DCLA? They might do that. They have the power to do that. Right. So the agency's choice is not it shouldn't be limiting and it shouldn't be restricting.
That's great. Thank you
But
so much.
six is okay if they make sense, but you can,
All right. That brings us right to 11:59. So we will wrap it up here. Thank you again so much, Regina and Evie, for being here and sharing all of this information. It's so valuable to our community. So just much appreciated for your continued partnership. And folks, just look for an email from me next week with resources, a survey, and links to the recording, all of that good stuff. If any other questions come up, please feel free to reach out to the roundtable always, and we will do our best to get you answers.
Yeah, and we look forward to hearing your feedback too. If there was stuff that, if we rambled on too long on one section and didn't talk about something else, let us know because we want to get this right.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday and hope to see you soon.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Oh,
Bye all.
bye.